for coming out. Yeah, thanks. It's an honor and a privilege to have all of you join us. I know this place always looks empty, but it's about 400 of you here today, which is great for our 34th anniversary year. And a lot certainly changed since we started doing this event and over the last 30 years, but a lot hasn't. And that's some of what we're going to talk about today. 2023 was kind of a crazy year. It's hard to believe that the so-called bank failures, that was only 8 months ago. The Silicon Valley Bank, we had the conviction of Sam Bankman-Friedman and all of the issues with the crypto, the invasion of Israel a couple months ago, and then the release, and this was kind of strange, of the Barbie movie and the Oppenheimer movie. So people are watching the Disney doll and the nuclear bomb. 2024 is going to be interesting as well. For the first time in history, we have elections in 50 countries, including the United States, with about 2 billion people going to vote. So as we look ahead today, we're going to talk a little bit about some resources for you guys. We're going to look at where we're at, where we're going, and then have our very special guest speaker talk about how to get kind of control of your day and your life. Now, I think most of us don't always see the world as it is, because we get all these inputs that are often negative, and certainly more than ever, with the social media, the internet, the competition on cable TV. And this can give us kind of a exaggerated and overly negative view, which I think can create unnecessary stress. So one of the things that's important is when we're operating on the wrong facts, it's very difficult to develop sound decisions. And so hopefully today we can look at some of what's really happening. And that's what our events are meant to do, is to kind of cut through the noise and bring you information that's hopefully implementable and applicable to your situation. It's also why our entire team likes to meet with people directly, as opposed to through the filter of the media or otherwise. And we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. We really are at a very interesting time. I would say that, and we're going to talk about the Deal Book Summit from New York and how people are looking at artificial intelligence. But most people agree that the creation of generative artificial intelligence is as big a paradigm shift as the creation of the internet or the steam engine or the silicon chip. And that's just happening now. Now, while there's a lot of changes that are happening, and again, I've done this, I hate to admit it, for 37 years. There are a lot of things that haven't changed, and the two biggest mistakes that we see people make remain the same. One is making bad decisions because of misperceptions, and then the other one is just underestimating inflation. Inflation is probably the biggest risk that we face today or that we faced 20 years ago. And I know you guys have heard me ask this every year for 20 years, but how many people paid more for the last vehicle they bought than the first house they bought? If you look at just the cost of a postage stamp or groceries, everything keeps going up. And as people live longer, it's important that their money lasts as long as it can. So when we started in 1990, our vision was to make people's lives better. And your vision and your goals are unique. And so we really believe that the planning has to be unique as well. Because together with you and your advisors, you create a clear path, for your future. Now, one of our core values, again, is helping the community. And we've done a number of philanthropic things. In 2022, we started a new program called the New Beginning Initiative, and there's information on this in your handouts. And you guys have done a phenomenal job donating food at all of our food drives. But I started looking at that and thinking, we're treating the symptom, not the cause. Why are people hungry or homeless in Lake County? And the problem was they weren't working. So there's certainly a set of people that don't want to work, and we're not going to help them. But there are also people that want to work, and they're just hindered because they didn't have transportation, they didn't have daycare, they didn't have those types of things. So with the Salvation Army and Lifeline, we created this initiative to basically help anybody that wants to work to provide free transportation, free daycare, and housing support as long as they're working. And that's been really successful. Last year we helped 34 families in the community. The other initiative I wanted to mention, because a lot of people aren't aware about the Lake County Free Clinic. Last year they had about 3,500 patient visits, and they support people that do need medical or dental care. And again, there's so many cool resources in our community that people may not be aware of. We think it's important just to bring some of that awareness. And so you'll see some information in your handouts as far as that goes. So in 2024, 3 big areas, and we're going to touch on all of these: the election, tax policy, and the economy, and of course, artificial intelligence and geopolitics. Now, all of us get asked a lot, what do you think is going to happen? And I think that's the wrong question. The more important question is not what's going to happen, it's how is what's going to happen going to affect you? Because if it doesn't, then it's more of an academic discussion. And so as we look ahead, we need to start to focus on, is it really going to impact me? And how can we mitigate whatever that is? Our belief is nobody can predict everything that's going to happen. Nobody predicted a 9/11. Most people didn't predict a COVID or an invasion of Israel. So we want to invest so those things don't matter. We want to have enough cash on hand to meet your income needs. And most of our clients, quite frankly, it's not about making as much as possible and taking more risk. It's about protecting what they have and growing faster than taxes and inflation can take it away. Now, some of you have seen this picture and quote, but I think it's as apropos today as it was in 2018 when Justin Trudeau said, "The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again." There's enormous opportunity and potential in that realization. Technology has always brought such promise, but it also brings dramatic shifts in our social, economic, and political cultures. And I think that's tremendously true today, especially with the AI. And again, I would say, how many of you guys watch Netflix? Okay, you're using AI when it says you'll like this or that. Or if you use Amazon and it says you might like this, that's artificial intelligence. Or if you start typing a text on your phone and it starts suggesting words, that's artificial intelligence. And it's just going to get more prevalent. The problem is, and is, again, you've heard me say this before, the role of the media is not to inform. There's so much competition, it's to draw you in as a viewer to sell advertising. So we get so much of this sensationalism. We're getting this filter. And as I said, all of our advisors are committed to speaking to the sources of information so we can bring to you what the thought leaders are thinking of. And so on November 29th, I had the honor and the privilege of attending the Deal Book Summit in New York. This was created in 2011 by a gentleman named Andrew Ross Sorkin to basically convene the day's most essential voices in a one-day summit where you could discuss everything that's changing. So the people that were there in person this year were Elon Musk, Kamala Harris, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, Shonda Rhimes, Linda Kahn, who's the head of the Federal Trade Commission, Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House, Bob Iger from Disney, Jay Monahan from the PGA Tour, and Jensen Huang, the person that founded NVIDIA, and some folks from OpenAI, and then by video, the President of Israel and the President of Taiwan. And there was a wide range of discussion, and you guys sent us a number of questions And I want to just take a minute to kind of go through some of the thoughts, because the one prevalent theme running through all this was, again, artificial intelligence. I mean, it's probably the only thing that Elon Musk and Kamala Harris actually agreed on for the day. But Elon said, most people are more concerned about looking good than doing good. I've done more for the world than anyone else. So, I don't know. Then he said, we don't know the questions to ask, but once framed, the answers are the easy part. He believes that technology should be for everyone. He helped create the company called OpenAI, which is the folks with ChatGPT, if any of you guys have ever done that. He feels if there's something called AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and that's where essentially computers are thinking and making decisions like a person. And he thinks we're going to hit that in the next 3 years. That, not the Skynet, like the Terminator movie, but he's very concerned about it. In fact, he was one of about 1,000 people that signed a letter to the government to try to slow down some of that creation. Everything that SpaceX does is non-patented. Anybody can use it. Of course, how many people can build a rocket? So I don't know how much of a gift that is. His belief is, and his mission, which is interesting, is that he wants to, quote, ensure humanity reaches the stars and settles other planets. If you're a single planet civilization, something bad's going to happen and you'll die. So his goal is to settle other planets, and that's kind of his vision for all these companies. Kevin McCarthy said he probably won't run for re-election, but he wants to focus on government and artificial intelligence, how to regulate it. Jensen Huang, who founded NVIDIA and built the first AI supercomputer, which Elon bought personally, he thinks the artificial general intelligence will be about 10 years. Kamala Harris, again, she thinks they're doing great. But, yeah, that was the reaction the audience gave, too. She's actually more articulate than you would think. But again, she feels we need to regulate that. Jamie Dimon, I don't know if there were 2 laws passed in Texas that would limit the state's work with banks that do not restrict energy or firearms licensing. And so they're pushing back against that. And then very interestingly, finally, they asked the president of Taiwan if she was concerned about China invading Taiwan, and she said no. She feels that China has so many internal problems that there's really no threat to speak of. They also asked about the Biden administration's efforts to bring chip manufacturing to the United States, and she feels that's not necessarily a bad thing. Of course, she's a politician, so who knows. But it was very interesting that regardless of the view, the focus wasn't so much on the war in Israel or Ukraine as it was a year ago. It was more about the technology, and so forth. And so technology can be a very good thing, but it can also pose risks to our privacy. Raymond James is the only Wall Street firm with a written guarantee that if something were to happen, that they will make you whole. There's no other firm that puts that in writing. And the team they have protecting your data is extensive. One thing I will say, we cannot accept text messages. I know we've talked about that before. The other thing is if you contact our office and you expect an email and you don't see it, most likely it got lost out in the blogosphere someplace. And we're finding more and more with Yahoo and Gmail. A lot of times they spin the emails to spam or to junk. So we'd suggest making Raymond James a safe sender. If you need any help with that, just give the office a call and we can discuss it. The other thing we constantly hear about is there's more volatility in the market. Things are going up and down more. Things are worse. And it's just not true. What has happened is because the market's gone up so much, and when the points are higher, the point swings are bigger. So when the Dow Jones is at 10,000, a 10% swing is 1,000 points. When the Dow Jones is at 37,000, a 10% swing is 3,700 points. But the reality is, you get about a 5% swing every 2 months, and you get 10% every 8 months. If you have $1 million portfolio and you move 10%, that's $100,000. That's not out of historic norms. And so you're going to hear more about these big point swings from the media because it sounds dramatic. But I guarantee you, if the Dow dropped 3,000 points tomorrow, they would lose their minds. And that's a pretty normal dip. Some of you may remember in 2020, in March with COVID, the markets dropped almost 30% before popping back. If we look at last year, the market was down. And again, when we talk about the market, our clients don't own the market. You're diversified, you have cash, you have fixed income. So looking at your return compared to the market really is apples to oranges. But that being said, if we look at last year, things did nothing, and then from the end of October to December, they shot up. And it's why you can't try to time these things. And in fact, if you look historically, 96% of market returns come from less than 1% of the days. And I wish I could tell you what those days were. But if I could, I wouldn't be here. Be on my yacht someplace. So you just don't know. The problem is if you miss just a few of those days, it kills your returns. If you look at the 27 years, from 1995 to 2022, if you missed just the 30 best days, your return was 1% a year. And if you missed just the 40 best days, you were negative. Whereas if you just stayed invested, you made about 8% a year. You doubled your money every 9 years. Now, the other question we get is about elections and does it matter who wins? The fact is markets go up regardless of what party's holding office, Democrats or Republicans, and you can see it kind of flip-flops back and forth, the yellow being Democrats, the orange being Republicans. Ironically, the best year typically is the third year of a presidency. The fourth year is actually since 2001 has been negative on average, and over the last 20 years it's been kind of mediocre. So as we look ahead, who knows? The past doesn't guarantee the future, and there are a lot of other factors out there. The other question we get is about who wins. The best combination historically has been a Democratic president with a Republican Congress. The second best has been a Republican president with a split Congress, and then you go back and forth. So I don't know that it matters as much who wins at this point. It's going to be a case of the policies. And it was very interesting at the Deal Book. Kevin McCarthy made a comment that the last election was about voting against the person you didn't like, not voting for the person you did. And hopefully that's going to change as we go forward. Now, in 2023, coming into October, the broader market was up 6%. If you look at most of the S&P 500, 493 stocks, 7 of the stocks, the so-called Magnificent Seven, were up almost 80%. And those 7 were Meta, which is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Google, NVIDIA, and Tesla. But the broader market really didn't do that much. And so if somebody didn't have those 7 stocks included or weren't in the index, they didn't necessarily participate. I think, and we think, as we go into 2024, the growth is going to broaden out from just those 7 companies. Now, what lies ahead? Again, we've talked about the fact that I think, and Warren Buffett said, the four most dangerous words for investors are "this time it's different." There's going to be a lot of discussion about the debt and the deficit. I mean, we're already seeing that with the election. If you look at the covers of Time magazine, I think my favorite's the monster deficit with the black hole. And then they talk about the new economy, where the jobs will be as robots take over. The only thing is, that new economy cover is from 39 years ago. That was 1983. All of these are from the 1980s. So these things don't change. These covers, Mideast Massacre, Israel's Blitz, these are the 1970s. Again, these could be today. So we're going to hear these things, but they really don't change that much. Right now, we're experiencing a relatively low and favorable tax environment. They doubled the standard deduction a few years ago. The tax rates came down. All of that is supposed to expire or sunset at the end of 2025. And so the estate credit, where you have a tax-free amount that passes to your heirs, will go from 12.9 million back down to 5.5. The standard deduction will get cut in half, but the SALT limits and some of the other things, like exemptions, will come back. So it's not all bad. But there are definitely some things to think about and to plan, both with your advisor and with your tax advisor, as we get ready for the sunset. Think about accelerating some gifting, the 529 plans. Think about possibly realizing capital gains, and then think about converting tax-deferred money to tax-free with a Roth. Especially if you're in a lower tax bracket than your heirs. One of the things that's not going away is that your heirs, if they're a non-spouse, must take money out of an IRA within 10 years of inheriting it. And they have to take it out of an annuity within 5. And so if it looks like your beneficiary is going to be in a higher tax bracket than you, it may make sense to start converting more of this money. There is a push from a certain group of politicians to put the tax tables back to where they were in the late 80s. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there'll be some sort of compromise. But I don't know if you remember, 1980, if you made over $35,200, you were paying about 43% to the federal government. And in $1980, at $215,000, you were paying 70% federal. And then you're paying about 5 to Ohio, plus your Social Security. It was about 85, 90%. So we do think there's some opportunities out there, as we look at rebalancing portfolios, taking advantage of what's happening. We think it's important to be intentional in your planning. Market timing certainly does not work. But buy and hold, which is better, avoids some of the advantages you can get with a very intentional approach, utilizing tax swaps, rebalancing, etc. And again, your advisors, as you meet with them, you can discuss this. We generally keep enough cash for any needs you're going to have, so it's important you communicate that to us. But by doing so, between that and the income generated, it doesn't really matter what happens. Behind the scenes, we have a lot going on with our internal investment committee in the office and monitoring these types of things. The other thing I will say, especially as things get more volatile, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. The two areas we see people get hurt, one is chasing kind of crazy crypto investments. They just made crypto ETFs publicly available this week, so you're going to see more about that. I'd be cautious. And then the other one, and you guys will hear the ads on the radio with Dave Mortosh and these other people about these indexed annuities, where basically the pitch is, if the market goes up, you'll make money. The market goes down, you make a reasonable return. And by the way, there's no cost. Well, it's true if the market goes up, you'll make a couple percent. If the market goes down, you might make a couple percent. But you're also going to be tied up for 7 to 10 years. And you're just not going to even keep up with inflation. And when you take the interest out, you're going to pay ordinary income tax. So if something sounds too good to be true, especially these things, I would be a little bit cautious. And again, if you see something that you think is good, ask us and we'll give you our opinion. The other thing that we've seen is people are obviously living longer. They're doing more. That keeping withdrawal rates and expectations reasonable can make a big difference. Historically, if you take out 4% or less on a balanced portfolio, money will last 30 years. As soon as you take out 5%, the probability drops to about 70% that it's going to last. And if you're in a predominantly bond portfolio, the odds are 40%. By the time you're taking 6 or 7, your probability drops dramatically. And so it's important, obviously you've worked hard for the money, it's there to use, but to be reasonable in both expectations and the other. See, the problem is people often are investing and withdrawals through the eyes of their parents. They look at what their parents experienced. When I started, in the 1980s, people retired at 65 and they died around 70, 72. Now people retire at 55 and they never die. I think we have 82 clients over the age of 90 now, and probably 6 over the age of 100. People are living a lot longer. They're doing a lot more. They're traveling, and that all costs money. So making sure the money lasts as long as you do is important. And the risk, as we said in the beginning, is inflation. So some resources we have, first and foremost, our relationship with Raymond James. I affiliated with them 34 years ago. It gives us access to a global company, whether it's their trust company, their bank, specialized lending, all the resources of a big company, but we don't work for them. We're truly independent. And so we don't have to sell or provide something that's just from them. We can work with anybody. The other thing is we have outside relationships with everything from helping with concierge medical care. We have both a local relationship now and a national one, to helping with travel and even private charter travel. On our website, I'd encourage you to look at some of the communications and things. Any events will be listed there. We update our blog every month. We typically update our videos each month. If there's an event you can't attend, it'll appear here typically about 2 weeks after the event under the video section. And then also if you use client access, where you log in, there are a number of 2-minute videos on how you can configure your view, how you can set up things, how you can deposit checks, pretty much anything you can think of that are there. Of course, you can always call our office. We do have a number of events coming up this year. The next event will be February 13th. It's a guy named Chris DeSantis. He wrote a book called Why I Find You Irritating, which is a great title. And it talks about intergenerational friction. We've got our golf outing. We're going to do the golf outing at the same price as 2022, so that'll be fun in June. We have Wings and Wheels, the baseball game, and then October 23rd, we're going to be doing an election update with Peter Lufkin, who you may have seen on CNBC periodically. We have 2 trips coming up in 2025. The next trip is Costa Rica this year. In January of 2025, we're doing Jamaica. That trip actually sold out, and we went back and got more rooms. I think we got 8 spots left for that. But it's January of 2025. It's about $5,000 for 2. And then we're planning in May of 2025 a trip to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Japan. So that's going to be the biggest trip we've ever done. At the end of the day, the most important resource is our team. Whether it's the advisors, the associates. We do continue to add. We just hired 2 new people, started on January 2nd. You may meet Danny Franco on our front desk, and then Hunter Schmeltzer's another junior advisor that just joined us. The goal for us is to be an enduring firm. We want to have multiple generations of advisors so we can be here for your kids and your grandkids. We do have a written succession plan. If something happens to me or anybody else, there is a plan in place. And we do recommend that you speak to your heirs or your power of attorney. If you've given power of attorney to somebody, let them know what your wishes are. If you'd like to set up a meeting to introduce them to us, we can do so without talking about dollars, just to understand the structure of what you have. Or if you just want to meet and utilize our office, we're happy to do that. If you need anything, you can call in anytime. Often, you don't need to speak to your advisor if it's something administrative, like you need cash, you're looking for a check, you want to change a beneficiary, any of those types of things, our entire team can help you with. If it's a more detailed investment question, then your advisor can help you. So, with all of that, and we will be around, our team will be around afterwards, our speaker, Liz will be around after. There's plenty of food and coffee left, so we're going to hang out if you do have questions for any of us. And then, of course, you can always reach out to the office. So Liz is the managing director and head of advisor engagement for Blackrock. She manages a larger team. She has a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania in applied positive psychology. She came in from New Jersey, so she's getting a taste of Ohio weather. And she was named Woman of the Year in 2021 by Women in Asset Management. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Liz Koehler.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Randy. So much great information, timely insight. It is lovely to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for having me. And we want to take this time for all of you. So I ask you in this moment to be a little bit selfish, and this is about you, and I want you to reflect on some of these concepts in your own lives. And I want to say a big thank you to Carver Financial Services for just connecting us and caring about this group and your well-being. So today we want to talk about, and I'm sorry, a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to move away from this mic. That might help. Is that better? Yeah? Okay. So what we want to do today is talk about 7 tools that help us when we think about our own personal and professional well-being, especially amidst a lot of change and choice and transitions in life. And this is based on some research that we did with a company called Designing for Better through the University of Pennsylvania. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We were able to research with over 50 amazing individuals and executives across industries. And really our focus with this research was to better understand how we can all think about and improve our well-being, and how transitions and choice and our plurality of roles in our life can impact our happiness and our well-being, especially given how much transition we all have. And so basically, like I said, we interviewed these 50 amazing executives. And while we came up with a lot of research, there were 7 tools that really emerged that helped a lot of these executives with their lives through times of transition. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Many successful individuals know that before we can start to focus on the larger elements of life, we need to start simple and we need to take back our days. And so that's the focus of this concept, win the day. And look, in reality, I don't have to tell this group, we've all been in a sea of change. Really, since COVID, well-being on a lot of metrics has suffered. And let's accept and understand life and its many transitions. Oh, there we go. This idea of transitions, what do we know? Well, the reality is we are constantly in a state of transitions, and they seem to be speeding up, especially with technology. And when we go through life transitions, whether it's a new job, whether it's retirement, whether it's moving, you name it, the reality is we face a lot of emotional ups and downs that can impact our mental health. But the good news is through training and various actions and some of the things we're going to talk about, we can actually create better outcomes from these transitions and improve our well-being in the process. So, bottom line, let's take the time to embrace what we can control, to focus on our intention, and really, no one knows exactly what the future can bring, but if we bring our intention here, it can really be a catalyst for positive change. So, when we think about these 7 tools that we uncovered from these executives, many of them are here. We call them that transition toolkit, and we'll talk a little bit about each one. Remembering self-compassion, right? This is, we think, the gateway oftentimes to our well-being, and we'll explain what that means. Relaunching connection, so important, we could spend all day on this. We won't, but we could. Rethinking rest, incredibly important in our very busy lives. Rekindling joy, right? Those positive emotions in our lives. Remodeling for flow, we'll talk a little bit about what that is and why so many business people and athletes and people across the world tap into it. Reassessing your time and your boundaries. And finally, rehabiting your routines. One thing I just want to mention in the 30 or so minutes we have together is please don't look at this as another set of to-dos in your life. That's the last thing that you all need, I get it. So I'm going to share a lot of the research that we uncovered and a lot of concepts, but at the end of the day, if you take one small thing from our time, one, I promise you it will start to improve your well-being and your mindset, including through times of change. So why don't we get started with our first one, which is this notion of remembering self-compassion. And look, especially when we hit times of pressure and stress, it's really easy to resort to self-judgment and catastrophizing and disconnection. We honestly don't give self-compassion the focus that it deserves. And it really is the foundation of our well-being. It's this notion of being a little bit kinder to ourselves. And it's not about being soft, and it's not about not being productive. In fact, I'll show you it's quite the opposite. So what do we mean by this, right? It sounds a little squishy, self-compassion. Well, it is what it sounds like, and it's this notion of extending compassion and acceptance to ourselves. And there are 3 keys to it. The first one, this notion of self-kindness. Do you treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend? Second is recognizing our common humanity. The reality is we're all pretty united, including through moments of suffering. And so it's this idea of relating, connecting, and frankly, empathizing with one another, which can be so powerful. And it's mindfulness. It's being mindful of our emotions and our feelings without over-identifying them. It's meeting them in a non-judgmental, present way, frankly, without adding fuel to the fire. So these are the key components. And the research shows there's so many benefits when it comes to self-compassion. It increases our motivation, our sense of self-worth, but it also fosters resilience. It increases forgiveness, and it can reduce anxiety, depression, and stress. I promise you, this inner game will affect your outer game. But let's begin first with understanding our inner madwoman or madman, right? This is a person who is inside of all of us, not so patient, often pushes way too hard, constantly critical. And there's this notion that self-criticism and shame are self-motivating factors, but this is a bit of a myth, right? It's a mistaken belief. The more you take time to understand this inner mad person, the more you can distance yourself from his or her inner vices and voices that can sabotage your productivity and your well-being. And please be aware, as humans, we have 2 tendencies, right, that are natural to us. One is a negativity bias. It served us very well thousands of years ago when we needed to survive, and it serves us less well now. And what is this? Well, really, when we expect, unfortunately, the worst in others, or we fixate on negative feedback. Think about yourself. Someone gives you 3 compliments and 1 constructive piece of feedback. Oftentimes we dwell on that constructive piece and not on the positives. And then rumination. This is when our thoughts, frankly, don't have an off switch, right? There's constant repetitive thoughts about something. Maybe it was a past conversation or a past mistake. But the reality is we have to be aware and know that we are constant memory-making machines. So how can we be intentional and try to make it a bunch of good ones? We all need a little bit of self-compassion, but here are some signs that you or others might need them a little bit more, right? Maybe nothing's good enough. You ruminate repeatedly over your mistakes. You compare yourselves to others, or you have this intense fear of failure. And the reality is, and psychologists tell us, we also have these belief windows, which are conversations that are happening all the time between our ears, but they're actually the most important conversations that we have all day. But this negativity bias and this rumination can actually cause these belief windows to be a bit flawed. So we have to bring some awareness to what's going on in our own minds. Perhaps start thinking what's right with me as opposed to what's wrong with me, or what haven't I accomplished, or what am I not doing. Zooming out and changing our perspective and trying to be a little less self-critical. Because the reality is perfect is no longer trending, right? And so how can we switch a little bit from a space of judgment to a space of non-judgment, which affects all aspects of our lives? So what did we hear in the research with these amazing executives? What are some things that they do? First, about creating some awareness of how we're talking to ourselves. Some of them use an awareness app, block their calendar, just try to pause and identify how they're talking to themselves during the day. And have a bit of a practice around this. And then once that awareness is created, it's about changing the channel in our brains, right? So some during negative self-talk told us that they just notice and try to shift their tone and talk to themselves the way they would a good friend. Others talk about physical movement, activity. Maybe it's getting up and getting outside in nature just to reframe and zoom out. Calling a friend, hugging a pet, humor, right? I really appreciate that. I think it really is the best medicine. So these are just some ideas. But I'd love to ask you all to just reflect, whether it's now or later, where are you experiencing some negative self-talk in your life? Maybe you're telling yourself you're not good enough, you're comparing to others, you're not getting enough done. How could you start to create just a little bit more awareness of that talk and start to change the channel, right? Reframe and bring just a little bit more acceptance and self-compassion into your own life. For the sake of time, I'm going to move to our next tool, but I'd love for you either to chat with a friend or a partner after the session or think about this as we go. Okay, relaunching connection. This is one of my favorites, super, super important. You probably see a lot of the research on this and why it's so important to focus and think about the connections in our lives, because frankly, connections are a miracle drug, whether it's at home or at the office. You can see so many of the benefits that come from connection: stronger immune system, longer lives, lower rates of depression, better quality work, better culture, and on and on. But unfortunately, we're at a bit of a crisis point. And even before COVID, 60% of the US workforce said that they are lonely. And this has real impact, right? It results in lower productivity, more missed work, right? Lower quality of work and higher turnover. And technology sometimes can give us the illusion of connection, right? Without the super high quality connections that we can actually invest in. For those who know Dr. Vivek Murthy, he is a Surgeon General. He was from 14 to 17 and is again today. And when you become Surgeon General, oftentimes you're expected to talk about things like the opioid epidemic or the importance of immunizations, and you tour the country and you talk to a lot of people. And what was so interesting is what Vivek found behind so many stories of addiction and chronic illness were deep threads of loneliness. Right? He saw that people felt lonely, and he equated it to the equivalent of 15 cigarettes a day, right? Like, it has real health impacts. And in his book, he talks about 3 different types of loneliness. One is intimate or emotional loneliness, right? This is kind of a close confidant or an intimate partner. Could be a spouse, could also be a sibling, a parent, a friend, right? Someone that you build that deep emotional bond with and trust. The second is around relational or social loneliness, right? This longing for quality friendships and companionship and support. And the third is collective loneliness, the hunger for a network or a community who share your sense of purpose and interests. The point is here, in order to truly thrive, we need to think about all 3 of these types of connections in our lives. And we said technology can trick us. It can make us think that quantity is better than quality, when we know the opposite is often true. When you have 1,000 friends on Instagram, do you really have 1,000 friends? But the good news is we can absolutely build deeper connections. And here, through both our research and others, are some ways to think about doing it, right? Seeking shared experiences. One gentleman told us how he makes it a goal of his to spark fun every day for just 5 minutes. Fostering connection, frequency of connection. Another woman told us about how she builds friendship into her to-dos or creates a weekly ritual. Maybe it's a walk or a coffee with a friend. Nurturing vulnerability and depth, right? A gentleman told us his New Year's resolution was to go phoneless and really listen when he's with people and make them feel valued and appreciated. And then having faith in others, right? Supporting them during ups and downs. It's not just about being dependable, it's about showing people you believe they are dependable. So there are strategies and actions we can employ. And I'd love for you to reflect on yourself. Who is just one person in your life that you want to connect more with? And what strategies could you use? Okay. Our next tool is this idea of rest, something that's so busy in our very important and busy lives and worlds. And look, the reality is we're all burning out a little bit. Yes, we need more sleep, but you know that already. I'm not talking about sleep, I'm talking about this notion of rest. And it is a flawed idea that you can use self-control to stay productive all day, every day. It's kind of like gaslighting, and it's damaging to the brain. The reality is we know an unused muscle will atrophy. A muscle that is used all the time becomes fatigued, but a muscle that is worked and then rested gets stronger, and that is the same for us as humans. And neuroscience also tells us we need to get into this default mode network. It's kind of like a low-grade dreaming when we rest. It's a really important time when we process the world around us. So we need this. And again, the benefits are many. I don't have to go through all of these, but reduced stress, lower blood pressure, pain relief, right? And on and on. But we rarely take a break at the right time. I'm sure you can relate. Oftentimes we wait till the tank is empty, right? And it's harder to recover, or we start to make mistakes, including with relationships. So we need to be proactive and think about rest. And there are 3 types of rest that are often cited. There's micro recovery, which could be a short walk, a meal, a quick break. There's mezzo recovery, which is sleep or days off. And then there's macro recovery, which are holidays or weeks off. The point is all levels are important, and consistency is what matters. When it comes to micro recovery, those shorter bursts, these are 7 different types: physical, mental, emotional, social, creative, spiritual, sensory. The point here is there are a lot of different ways to rest, and we're all unique, and some of these will resonate with you and some of them won't, and some of them will work at certain times and some of them won't. It could be listening to music, a quick nap, a walk, turning off your devices, right? But the reality is there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it's important to acknowledge and build awareness around rest in your own life. One on the spiritual rest category that really resonates with me is time in nature. It's so restorative, right? A 10-minute walk goes such a long way. If I can't do that, opening a window, listening to sounds of nature. This is just one example. So, what are some of the things that we heard from the executives that we spoke to around ways that they engage in these micro bits of rest? You'll see a bunch of examples up here on the screen. Listening to music, watching something funny. Again, humor is so restorative. It can be the best medicine. Taking a nap, lighting a candle, doing a puzzle, calling a friend. These are all great examples of micro moments of rest. You knew it was coming. So I'd love to ask you to reflect for a moment and think, what are 1 or 2 small ways that you can incorporate more rest that resonates with you into your life and help to restore you? And think, be specific, right? When, where, and how. Okay, this is a fun one. We're now going to tap into our joy metric, and where we experience happy and positive moments, right? They're different for everyone, but increasing the frequency and the duration of your daily jolts of joy can go a long way to adding to your well-being. Look, I want to be clear. Life is never a constant state of positive emotion, and it was never designed to be. We need both positive and not so positive emotions in our lives to live that rich and full life. That is absolutely true. But jolts of joy can help improve our experiences and make us more responsive to opportunities and challenges. And it's been tracked, right? It can lead to a more optimistic mindset, right? Increased resilience, more acceptance. You know, it's funny, a lot of people ask us, like, I don't know what makes me joyful? And that's totally fair and okay, especially as we get into our adult lives. Couple of questions you can ask yourself. What would you do on a perfect Saturday? What brought you joy as a child? What did you love to do? These are some things that you can start to ask to bring a little bit more clarity to how you can have more moments of joy in your own life. A couple of simple but meaningful and tangible examples. Practicing kindness, right? Kindness gives you jolts of joy that is known to increase your energy, your lifespan, and the other bonus is it's totally contagious. Another one, and a growing body of research, is leveraging the arts. Right? Arts, whether it's music, beautiful paintings, going to see a play, pictures, you name it, it's known and proven to help us through tough times, make more meaning and help us be more present, increase connection, and savor the past. So along those lines, a couple of pieces of collective wisdom that we heard included showing kindness to others, right? It could be as simple as complimenting a friend, treating someone to coffee, connecting with the arts. Do you have a playlist that you love, a music playlist, photos that make you smile? It could be expressing gratitude, making a meal for someone that you care about, or leaving a larger than normal tip, or other things like walking your dog outside, or treating yourself to a smoothie or something you enjoy. The idea is creating awareness around these events that's just as important as the events themselves. So I want to ask you, is there one small way that you can evoke and build a few more jolts of joy into your own life? And if you need help, think about what you loved to do as a child. Think about something that makes you smile or feels like a needed escape. And just try to increase a little bit the amount of joy that you employ on a daily basis. It can really help you through times of transition. Okay. These next three, I'm conscious of time. They shouldn't take us too long, but I really want to hit on a few of these. One is Remodeling for Flow. One of my favorite books by an author named Csikszentmihalyi is a book called Flow. That's the title. I highly recommend it. It's fascinating. What is flow? Well, flow is defined as this optimal state of consciousness, right, where we feel our best and we perform our best. To some, it's when your mind isn't wandering and actions and awareness start to merge. And it's a sense when our mental and our physical abilities, frankly, go through the roof, right? We dial into this calm sense of self. And there's a great quote here by a Harvard psychiatrist that says, flow is the doorway to the more that most of us seek. Few other names that might ring a bell: runner's high. If you do stand up, you're in the forever box. Basketball, you're unconscious. Or sometimes at work, you're in the zone, right? But the good thing is flow is accessible to everyone. And it's where we have enough challenge and enough skill to enter into a place where we're totally immersed in the task at hand. And you see it on the matrix here, right? It's where we have a sense of control without consciously exerting it. But sadly, many of us spend very little time in this state. Again, huge benefits to flow that have been studied and researched and published everywhere, including Forbes magazine and great for businesses and beyond, right? It impacts our confidence and our productivity and is a real competitive advantage, and it increases our well-being. Unfortunately, on average, we spend about 5% of our time in flow. And what if we could increase that to even just 20%? Imagine the impact on our creativity, our motivation, less hours worked on things we don't want to, greater joy and well-being. But we have to be a detective and ensure that we eliminate flow killers in our lives, which include lots of distractions, interruptions, right? A lack of boundaries, a lack of goals, a lack of self-belief. And when we get rid of these, we run into the ability to tap into flow. One other thing I want to mention, if you haven't read about it, is the Pomodoro technique. Is an interesting way to think about your time, where you break your work down into slices. Could be 25 minutes, could be 45 minutes. But the idea is you focus on one task at a time. You stay motivated and focused to completion. I promise you, look it up. It's a great way to increase well-being and your time. And so just to wrap up on flow, a few things that these executives told us that they do. They organize for success. First, they clear the decks. They try to eliminate a lot of distractions and interruptions. They create a goal, and they chunk it down, right? What do I want to get done? How do I make it simple? They make sure they measure it. So they use timers, they use the Pomodoro method, they get feedback. They make sure their skills match the challenge at hand. They concentrate on that task, again, trying to turn off the phone and the email, and they're courageous, right? So there's no room for self-criticism. You can't be worried about making a mistake when you enter the flow state. So I'd love for you to think for yourself, when are you in flow? And this is different for everybody. When are you lost in the moment and really focused and dialed in? How can you create more of it in your life? Okay. Our second to last theme is around boundaries and our next tool, and really important as we think about bringing a lot of these things together. What are they? Well, boundaries are these invisible lines we draw around ourselves and our time to determine what is and what is not okay in our lives, right? Because oftentimes when we don't have them, our sloppy borders gobble up our time and they diminish our life stories. And so it's really important to think about how we want our time to be allocated. And it's interesting too when you see, this idea that, we've all been through where a lot of things blend together, family, animals, pets, kids, work, and it can lead to burnout because we're trying to do way too many things at the exact same time. I thought this was interesting. Apart from our day-to-day habits, we need to be more deliberate in where we give our important resource, which is our attention. 40%, I thought was interesting, of our daily actions are made up of habits, which don't require our conscious deliberation, but that means 60% do, right? And how can we use our attention as intentionally as possible? Because our attention is the most powerful tool for both living a good life and getting stuff done. We know boundaries can help us with better self-esteem, conserve our energy, and give us more independence and agency. And so how can we gain control over our attention, right? And intention, because that's where our well-being increases as well. And I thought this was interesting too. It's proven that over 40% of our to-do list items are actually never completed. Yet, I don't know about you, they take over our lives and our minds. And so how do we think about time blocking versus our endless list of to-dos? This was something these executives shared with us, both personally and professionally. They use their calendars to block time for what's most important for them. And it helps them with an increased sense of accomplishment, helps them prioritize the roles and the values that matter to them, to do more of that one thing at a time and get into flow, and to define working hours even better. So think about how you block your time versus living by an endless list of to-dos, of which 40% probably won't get done. You'll find not only do you feel more control, but it helps your mental state as well. And it helps us to live with more intention, to show up the way that we want to and use our time the way we want to show up in life. So I'd love you to think about that, right? Are there ways that you can reorient what you need to get done around time blocking versus your endless to-do list? Okay, great. Our last theme is this idea about rehabiting our routines. We hear a lot about habits. I don't know if folks have read much about James Clear, Atomic Habits. Great book if you haven't. He's done a lot of awesome research on this. And we talked earlier about how 40% of what we do every day is a habit, right? And we know that habits make life easier, but they can also make us a whole lot happier. So how can we pause and think about habits and how they feed into our lives? And when we think about habits, it's really helpful to put them in the context of our broader routines. Take your morning routine, for example, right? Hopefully, a lot of healthy habits can make up a morning routine, whether it's drinking water, taking vitamins, eating a healthy breakfast, checking the calendar, etc. But there are huge benefits to starting small, and this is what James Clear talks a lot about, and making small, consistent improvements. You see on this visual here, there's basically no difference between making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse. But over time, you see there's a massive gap between folks who make decisions, slightly better decisions on a daily basis versus those who don't. So this idea of starting small actually has some scientific merit to it. Successful habits follow a consistent framework too, right? When we think about creating habits, it's this process. First you plan it, the idea is make it reasonable, make it small. Then you cue it, you piggyback it off of an existing action or activity, you do it, and you gold star it. You celebrate a little bit, you have fun, and then you tweak and repeat. I'll give you a quick example. Maybe your goal, a small goal, you want to take a vitamin in the morning, right? So first, you cue it. You know that you have a cup of coffee in the morning, and the stacking is really important. So when you go to brew your coffee, you take out your vitamins. You take the vitamins, And then when you do it, you congratulate yourself. It sounds funny, but if you don't give yourself a little pat on the back, it gets more difficult. So take a moment to celebrate. And then be patient, right? We hear this, but ultimately it takes time. If A is the start of a habit, and you have multiple repetitions, after B, it starts to get easier. But basically, a neural circuit is created in the brain, right? And so you're creating structure to make it more efficient in that activity. And then by C, it's more automatic, and a habit is formed. So look, we heard a ton of small, tiny habits from the executives that we interviewed. It was really inspiring, but I'll hit on just a couple to give you some thoughts on what they shared. Whether it's rebooting their mornings with tiny habits, right? Next to the cup of coffee, people would make sure that they had a water glass, or when their feet reached the floor, they stretched. Connection tiny habits. In the coffee line, smile and unplug, or send someone a have a great day text. Look and feel habits, right? After dressing, just pausing and carefully accessorizing. One woman talked about that. Or another one would be turning on the computer, tidying up for 2 minutes. These are just little habits that are stacked against other activities, but over time can create more well-being and more control over the day. So again, I'll ask you to think in your own minds, what is maybe one small habit that you would like to employ? Small, right? How can you cue it, do it, and gold star it in your own life, and start small? So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Just a couple reminders of some of our key takeaways from our research. Look, we're navigating a messy time. There is no question, right? And we have to bring awareness, acceptance to life and its many transitions and the impact it can have. We're all humans, right? But there are a few things we can do, and a lot of these really successful people that we spoke to do to help them through transitions. Remember self-compassion. How can you pause, see how you're talking to yourself, be a little kinder to yourself? Connection is so important right now. Even when it feels a little awkward, it's worth it. We cannot underestimate the power of rest, right? This is beyond just sleep. It's important. And think about what makes you happy when you rest. How do you increase the frequency and duration of your daily jolts of joy? How can we design our environments to achieve the incredible benefits of flow? By setting better boundaries, we can gain control not only of our attention, but our intention. And aligning our habits is vital to our well-being. And so just to close, right, we're often great learners as humans, myself included, but not always such great action takers. And so what do we do with this information? How do we take some of these learnings and move them into action? I think it's two things, right? One is this idea of starting small, right? Take one thing that you liked from today, hopefully there was one, one thing that you really liked from today, and try it. And then celebrate, right? Even if it's small, give yourself a pat on the back. This is hard. You're all busy people. It's hard to try new things. We know that the best antidote to anxiety is action. So try something new, talk to people. Life is what designers call a wicked problem. There's no perfect solution. There are actually many good solutions. So I would say make it small, set the bar low, and give something a try. I'm happy to stay after the session if anyone wants to talk more, has questions, has ideas you'd like to share. But I just want to say thank you again so much for having me here and for your time and attention.
Thank you. So, as we look at the year ahead, I think it's going to be obviously another interesting one. A lot of opportunity, a lot of challenges. Please, all the material Liz covered, there's a summary in your handouts. Reach out. As I say, we'll all be around back in the cafeteria afterwards. And if you need anything, reach out to us. We appreciate your coming out. Thank you.